Hello dear students, once again welcome to your mains exclusive program. Today we are in the subject of science and technology. Now as you know, when it comes to your prelims, this area has a lot of factual and a lot of importance from your prelims questions. But when it comes to your mains questions, let's have a quick analysis on what happens with science and tech. First of all, you do see the fact that if I had to put the different categories, you have an area called as recent developments and their applications and effects in everyday life. Now, these recent developments need not always be Indian developments. It can be global developments also. So that is where you have the recent developments part. Then after that, you have achievements of Indians in science and tech, and this is an upcoming area where questions keep getting asked. One area that relatively, if you look at it, it gets combined with a lot of other things is your indigenization of technology and developing new technology. For example, how these questions get asked is, there might be a global revolution in artificial intelligence. So that is a recent development that happens. Right. So they ask a question combining these both. They'll say that artificial intelligence is booming all over the world. And in that context, what is India trying to do with respect to artificial intelligence? So these are the kind of questions coming to any emerging technology like quantum computing, supercomputing, any of these emerging tech when it is there. The questions generally get framed combining this part and this part. They'll talk about the recent development and they'll attach how it is relevant for India into that question. Okay, or how India is planning to make that technology its own in that question. Then coming to the most common thing, which is general awareness of fields of IT, space, computers, robotics, nanotech and biotech. When it comes to this, understand IT and computers are not seen very distinctly by UPSC. It's generally clubbed together. Robotics is one area which has been very irrelevant in the sense that there has not been any UPSC question so far from this particular field. If you take the last 7 years, I'm talking about the last 7 years, for us to form like a more or so pattern kind of a thing. So here when you look at it, IT and computers get clubbed together. So that is one part. Then there is space, another part, nanotech the third part, and biotech the fourth part. Robotics has been relatively sidelined by UPSC, though there are robotics developments happening in the world. Then an area which was sidelined until now is your IPR, but last year we did have an IPR related question. So for your convenience, I've just put a table as to make it very clear to you which area has to be focused, which has to be a little bit, in the backdrop kind of a thing. You can see that every year on an average, UPSC puts out 2 questions. That is the average. Okay. Very rarely, that is in that 2020 alone, you've had 3 questions that came from science and tech. And that is because we know 2020 was the year where you had your COVID and everything. So there were a lot of scope for science and tech questions. That is why in 2020 you had 3 questions in science and tech. But other than that, if you look every single year, 2 questions is the average. 1 10 marker, 1 15 marker. That is on an average, your science and tech will fetch you somewhere around 25 to 35 marks. Okay, so you can observe that. In 2024, the question was from space and IPR. In 2023, the question was from emerging tech and space. In 2022, the question was from space and Indian achievements. So on an average, it's 2 questions. Now, if I look at it like an area sort of a thing, which area is more asked kind of a thing, you can observe over here from biotech in the last, I'm talking from the years 2024 to 2018, by the way, guys. Okay, so if you take those numbers, you will see that from the biotech, you've had 2 questions, nanotech 1, emerging tech 1, space 4 questions, robotics 0, Indian achievements in science and tech, etc. 2 questions, recent developments, and it is developments related to health, vaccines, etc. etc. That is all coming under almost 3 questions, and IPR 2 questions. So from this itself, it's quite clear to us that the most important area certainly is the developments that happen in space, and very closely followed by your biotech recent developments of India in different sectors, etc. So what I have divided these sessions into is 2 parts, wherein today we'll be discussing about the space and the biotech related developments and the most probable areas from where questions can come, and tomorrow we'll be doing your Indian achievements and your emerging tech. So from both of these sections, or from all of these sections, what I have done is taking into account the last 1 year's current affairs, but more or so last 6 months current affairs is the one that is more focused, because that is again how UPSC tends to pick certain areas. So from those, I have modeled certain questions and areas that will be useful for you. Now that cannot go, or that just learning the current affairs will not just help you do those questions. The reason being that most of the time, if they want to ask a development in biotechnology, they will start off by asking, okay, what is biotechnology, what are the applications of biotech, etc. So in this way, in each area that I'll be discussing, I'll be first talking about a static part, and from the static part, what is the kind of questions that can or connected to your current affairs. So without much delay, let's go into the first area. The first area that we're discussing about is your biotechnology. A quick revision on what biotechnology is. I mean, I'm sure you guys would have learned all of this for your prelims, but when it comes to mains, you need to have a mindset change into putting all this into an answer form. So here, the definition of biotechnology stands as, it is the use of living organisms, cells, or biological systems and processes to develop certain products and technologies. And these products and technologies can be used in areas of healthcare, agriculture, environment, and industry. So again, when you study the applications of biotechnology, you have to ensure that you have, just direct 6-7 points under each of these categories. 6 applications in healthcare, 5 or 6 applications in agriculture, environment, industry, so on. We'll be doing this very quickly. So get this right. This is the definition of biotech. Let's first go into the applications of biotech in agriculture. Another way this kind of a question can be framed is, what is green biotech and what are the applications of green biotech? So when they ask you something like that, I want you to understand, if they ask you green biotechnology, all you have to do is change this definition into green biotechnology is the use of living organisms, cells, or biological systems and processes to develop products and technologies for agriculture. Just choose the area, change the same definition. As everyone says, mains is not about learning so much of content, but the ability to use one set of content in multiple forms. Okay. So here, if they ask you green biotech, connect it to your agriculture. If they ask you red biotech, connect it to your healthcare. I hope you are aware of this. Okay. If they ask you white biotech, connect it to your industry, etc. Okay. Now, so let's go into the applications of biotech when it comes to agriculture. First of all, biotechnology can be used to create new crops. Now, when we say crop improvement, all of these factors come into it. The yield of the crop, the shelf life of the crop, the climate tolerance of the crop. You can either write it as 3 points or one single point which says crop improvement. So when it comes to yield, pest resistance, drought or salinity tolerance, for all of these applications, you can genetically modify the seeds. Now again, there's a common misconception. When we say the word biotechnology, it can be as simple as using a biological product. For example, there is a certain bacteria, suppose that bacteria is very good at eating your plastic. So what you do is you extract that bacteria and you put it into some capsule form or something that can be used for that process. Now you have not genetically modified that bacteria, but still it is called as an application of biotechnology. So again, if that's not clear in your head, you have to get this. Biotech is a huge field. Genetic engineering is one of the tools that may be used in biotech to create certain biological products. Got it? So genetic engineering, don't think biotech when you hear itself, there is some gene change that is happening. That does not occur. So when it comes to this over here, again, the examples, when it comes to this science and tech questions, try including maximum examples over here. So crop improvement, when we are saying BT cotton is created in this way for being insect resistant, then you have golden rice where vitamin A is fortified into the rice. Then you have something called as your flavor savor tomato, which is actually increasing the shelf life of your tomato. Then you have our very own GM mustard. So all of these can get included in this. Then plant tissue culture. Biotechnology's one other application is to do micro propagation. That means at the very tiny level, not just using your seeds, using certain genetic material and creating the seed cover, etc. and to create disease-free planting material. So you can see that your banana, sugarcane, tissue culture, all of that happens through this application of biotechnology. Then as I mentioned earlier, biofertilizers. See, in biofertilizers, you are not genetically modifying anything. You have certain excellent microorganisms like your rhizobium, azospirillum, mycorrhiza, etc. They can be extracted, they can be added into the soil to reduce the dependence on chemical fertilizers. Then you have on a very similar line, you have biopesticides also. Biopesticides, for that you have examples like your Bacillus thuringiensis, Trichoderma fungi, etc. where the same thing, the biological component is used to act against certain other pests. Then you have also the quality of marker assisted breeding. That means if you have two or different kinds of breed, to ensure that the genes that you want is getting transmitted into the next generation, what happens is you don't change anything in the genetic material. So this one has a feature that we like. Second one also has a feature that is desirable. Into the genetic content, you place certain tags, sort of a thing, like you're highlighting that part also. So what happens is when we will be able to detect if at the end of this entire process, once this genetic transfer has happened, if it has transferred to the next generation or not. This is what is called as your marker assisted breeding for the faster selection of desirable traits. And this is how your hybrid maize, drought tolerant rice, all of that is created. So as you look at this over here, when you look at the applications of biotech in your agriculture, it has varied applications because they have not constrained it to the idea that genetic modification has to happen. So you have crop improvement, tissue culture, biofertilizers, biopesticides, etc. that can be mentioned as applications of biotech. Then as we move further, we have the applications of biotech in health, which is otherwise also called as your red biotechnology. Okay, this is called as red biotechnology. You will see over here, in this case, it's more or so you have a lot of genetic modification happening. So for example, recombinant DNA products. Recombinant DNA means you are trying to extract or change the DNA from different things and bring it together. So for example, production of hormones, enzymes, vaccines, etc. can happen by this. Examples of it being that the insulin, there is a certain insulin that's created called as humulin from the certain cells of pigs. but it is used in humans also. So this is one such example. Creation of monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies are something that is created from outside and put into our body to fight against very targeted cells, if you might see. For example, when it comes to cancer cells, etc. So here, monoclonal antibodies for targeted cancer therapy, autoimmune diseases, etc. So if one such example is Herceptin for breast cancer is created, or that kind of a therapeutic drug is created in this manner. Gene therapy. Gene therapy is to correct any of those defective genes that are causing any disease. Any kind of, for example, most of the times when you have these any kind of genetic traits that can get transferred from one of the parents also, that can be corrected in the egg cell of the parent. It can be corrected. For example, when it comes to the different trials that are happening in SCID, which is your severe combined immunodeficiency. For certain diagnostics, when you want to have certain kits made for quick diagnosis, and this is something that was used in your Nipah, Zika, COVID, etc. The RT-PCR test that was there, this is all an expression, or this is all use of biotechnology. Then you have pharmacogenomics. That means trying to get a complete idea of a person's genetic structure and seeing that what is the medicine that will act perfectly well for their conditions. This is what is called as pharmacogenomics. And to understand that also, or to do that also, what do you need? You need biotech. Stem cell therapy, for example, we have already studied about stem cells for our prelims, but understand here when it comes, in the case of if you want to have your induced pluripotency. See, when you write science and tech answers, always ensure that you use these words, okay? Don't shy away from the science words that you know. The reason being that this is what, don't think, oh my god, it's so complicated, let me dumb it down for someone. But you can do that for the rest of the answers. Don't do it for areas which are very technical in nature. For example, science and tech, environment, your certain terms that are used in your international relations. Don't try to dumb it down thinking that, okay, maybe I have to have simpler language. If you know something of these technical terms, try to use those terms in your science and tech answers. So here, induced pluripotency, if you want to do certain processes like that, regenerative medicine that is there, for all of these, you can use your applications like stem cell therapy. Then obviously the most current development that is there for vaccines, when you have to create your mRNA vaccines, DNA vaccines, etc., that were created by your Pfizer and Oxford, etc. So these were all, that is also a part of the applications of biotech in health. The reason why I'm giving you this list is because if they tomorrow ask you nanotech in health or some other related field in health, or tomorrow, for example, the very next topic that we'll discuss is something called as synthetic biology, and trust me, that is a very short area for being asked this year. So if there is something like that and they suddenly ask you what is the application of synthetic biology in health or in agriculture, etc., these pointers will help you to generate points, even though if you have not created a separate note for it. So just jot these points down and the examples if you are running out of time. Moving forward, this is the application of biotech in environment protection. This is an area that combines. So when you look at the applications of biotechnology in environment protection, it can be used for bioremediation. As we know, for certain in situ bioremediation, you can use microbes to clean up your spills, pollutants, etc. You have your pseudomonas that is used like that, which can be very useful in degrading your hydrocarbons. Then you have another process called as phytoremediation, where certain plants are engineered to absorb contaminants. For example, your genetically modified certain plants can absorb arsenic from your soil. Then coming into another category called as your waste management. Waste management, again, for when there's a lot of plastic waste and everything combined together, or in certain other techniques called as your bioreactors. What you see is the different microbes that can, quickly treat and compose this waste can be put into the sites over there. So here you will see that even certain bioreactors in creating a quick decomposition of products that can be used as an application of biotech. Biosensors to detect any kind of environmental toxins. You can create certain kits that are having biological components. For example, we commonly know that certain plants like your lichens and etc. are very sensitive to sulfur dioxide pollution. So you can figure out what is the component in the lichen plant that makes it so vulnerable to it acts like an indicator of sulfur dioxide pollution. So once you figure that out, you can use that genetic content and create a sensor, a biosensor that will detect the different levels of your sulfur dioxide pollution. So again, here you've created arsenic biosensor kits in this manner. Then biofuels to produce your bioethanol, biodiesel, etc. Common questions means your Jatropha biodiesel that is there, your Pingamia plant. These are all the different areas or different kinds of plants from which your biofuels can be created. Creation of bioplastics. These are actually microbially produced biodegradable plastics, commonly known as PHAs, which is polyhydroxy alkanoates. Polyhydroxy-alkanoates. So even in all of these functions, you can use your or in functions of environmental protection also, you can use your biotechnology. And finally, now coming into certain industrial applications that are there. Biotech also has applications in white biotech like this to create certain enzymes, for fermentation technology, for synthetic biology. This is where we move into the next topic. I have introduced this over here so that the distinction becomes very clear to you. Biotech is a very large section. Biotech has various applications in agriculture, health, industry, environment, etc. One such application which is used in industry is called as synthetic biology. And synthetic biology becomes an important topic for us. I'll come to why it is important and everything, but understand that. So synthetic biology is an application of biotechnology in your industries. Now, the last one being biorefineries. So enzyme tech means, for example, to create certain industrial enzymes for detergents, textiles, food processing. You would have seen, these milk packets that stay for a very long time. Normally, your milk which is there, you get it and then in one day, 1 or 1.5 days, it perishes. But you would have seen these Amul or your Softed kind of a milk pack where the milk has a very long shelf life. How does the milk stay like that? That's because certain industrial enzymes are put into it for a longer life. So all of these to create amylases, proteases in certain detergents, etc. All of that is done via biotechnology. Fermentation technology for the large scale production of antibiotics, vitamins, etc. You can also create you can also have your biotechnology to create penicillin from Penicillium chrysogenum. Synthetic biology, anyway, we'll be discussing in detail, but understand so designing certain microbes for new chemicals, materials, etc. Like how you are generating synthetic yeast for your bioethanol. Then coming into biorefineries, you will see conversion of agriculture waste into chemicals and fuels. For that also, you can use your biotechnology applications. So with that, we are covering a very static area as to what is biotechnology and the application of biotechnology in agriculture, health, environment and industry. Moving on to the next area. The next area is super important for this year. The reason being that there are two reasons. First of all, synthetic biology was in news in several fronts. One important news related to synthetic biology is India launched or India gave out its Bio E3 policy. This is India's first policy in biotechnology and biomanufacturing. Very crucial policy, I would say. Now, this policy completely surrounds the idea of synthetic biology. So, I am seeing a question maybe that has a combination of both. They will start off by asking what is synthetic biology, what are its applications, etc. How is India's Bio E3 policy going to impact synthetic biology, some kind of a combination question of sorts. So let's look into what the definition, what are the things that you need to know about synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is an interdisciplinary field of science, or you can also say synthetic biology is an application of biotechnology that involves, so the next part is what it does. It involves designing, constructing new biological parts, devices and systems, or even redesigning existing biological systems for useful purposes. Now, it sounds like any other application, but the important part over here is synthetic biology means that, see, for example, you are having, normally there is a yeast that can break down sugars. Now, you want an yeast that can break down sugars and maybe protein. So, you create that yeast. Now, to create that, one of the tools you need is biotech. But you also need computer modeling, chemistry, the knowledge of all of these fields. This is the reason why synthetic biology is called as an interdisciplinary field of science that involves designing and constructing new biological parts, devices, systems, etc. And the use of synthetic biology is primarily in your industry and commercial applications. This is also how it's different from the other broader fields. Got it? This is such a booming field because associated, so understand it in this clear terms, we can have so much of development in biotech, in health, in agriculture, etc. The improvements of biotech and chemistry and everything in your industry, it gives rise to the field of synthetic biology. In synthetic biology, you create certain goods and products and biological goods and products and everything. And because of that, what happens is you can increase your economy, environment and employment. This is at least India's vision. So, when India came up with the Bio E3 policy, the idea was using synthetic biology for the betterment of economy, environment and employment. So first, you have synthetic biology. Synthetic biology will lead to improvement in economy, environment and your employment. And once all of these things improve, you can say our bioeconomy has improved. So what is bioeconomy? In case the question comes on that model, if they ask what is India's bioeconomy scene like, then you have to start from there and you can say bioeconomy is the production, use and conservation of biological resources, including and related knowledge related to science, technology, etc. What do they do? To provide information, products, processes and services to all economic sectors. In very simple terms, it is the creation, use and conservation of biological resources to create information, or to use of all of these things to create information, products, services, processes, etc. for all economic sectors. So you're using biology for economy, and that is called as bioeconomy. Okay. So understand, at the crux of it, this combines two important factors, which is biology and economy. And if economy needs to be improved, your industries and such things need to be improved. And how do you improve such things? Here they are trying to do it using synthetic biology. Okay, so prepare yourself for this kind of a scene. So here, why do we need, now if the question comes in any of these formats, that's the reason why I put this content like this. If the question comes need for synthetic biology or need for Bio-E3 policy, if the question is a solely policy related question, what is the Bio-E3 policy of India? Why do we need it? What are the features of it? If it is coming in that front also, the need is all listed. And in bioeconomy, if they're asking why do we need a bioeconomy, that is also the same points. So try using these points in whatever context the question comes. Now, why do we need a bioeconomy, or why did we need a Bio-E3 policy? Like after such a long time of development of science and everything, is where we are having India's first biotechnology policy for your economy, environment, etc. So it's a very focused policy that is there. Why do we need it right now? We need it right now because in India, even without us giving so much of boost itself, bioeconomy has grown from $10 billion in 2014 to $130 billion in 2024. And that is with very minimal push from the government. Imagine if there was sole focus on it. If there was so much sole focus on it, it is assumed that we can have a very high ambition of achieving $300 billion by 2030. $300 billion bioeconomy by 2030. So a policy will help us, be focused on that front. So these are from the economic angle. Then coming to a very important feature is the fact that when you are looking at the economic sectors of India, you have a very focused idea called as green and circular economy. Green and circular economy means, first part, the green part actually means that you have development in a sense, or you create economic development in a way that you don't have so much of wastage, it's not environmentally degrading, etc. Now that target will be met by synthetic biology. Why? Because you are using biological resources for your benefit. Similarly, circular economy also. These systems are designed in such a way that there is not much of wastage into the environment. So this target of the government can also be served by focusing on your Bio-E3 policy, bioeconomy or synthetic biology. Any of these pointers come, any of these questions come, these are the points that have to go under it. Apart from that, your synthetic biology is actually seen as a sunrise sector. Sunrise sector means an upcoming sector where we have already a way in, because we do have certain organizations like your IISc, your different ICAR, etc. that have done considerable research in your bio-related commercial products. So what happens is, here is some place where we can actually make good inroads. Then coming into the fact that we are having a nutritional challenge, and for this nutritional challenge to be, or a food security challenge that is there, for a food security challenge to be solved on a massive scale, you need certain products which are smart proteins, functional foods with low carbon footprint, etc. Even that can be created using synthetic biology. When in the next slide I'll be telling you about the Bio-E3 policy, you will see that one of the major features of your Bio-E3 policy is creating food without cruelty. That means that you are trying to create certain products using your biological resources in a very ethical, sustainable way. Then by 2027, the cell and gene therapy market is forecasted to be almost 22 billion. And again, for this, you need policy help. And that is what your Bio-E3 policy. Yeah. Next thing is climate change mitigation that we are very focused on. When you look at climate change mitigation, you can see that when you look at climate change mitigation, to achieve decarbonization, etc., you need the help to, to quickly break down any kind of carbon-rich substances that are there and to store it in a very environmentally friendly way. For that, also your synthetic biology or your Bio-E3 policy will be helpful. And finally, for different space missions, this is a very interesting thing. Why? Because when you are on your space missions, you cannot have your full-fledged meals and everything over there. So you will need to have supplements of your vitamins, proteins, micronutrients, etc. And synthetic biology is one such field that can make these or can have enough research and create products that can be good supplements that can be used for space missions. So as a whole, when you look at the need for synthetic biology or your Bio-E3 policy, this is something, all of these points indicate to the fact that this is something that India is going to be hugely benefited by from an economy point of view, environment point of view, space point of view, employment point of view, because once you have to do all of this, this also needs people who are highly skilled, and that is also going to create employment opportunities. Okay, so all the data that we are mentioning in this, I hope you jot it down as we go by. So now if this is the need for all of this, let's go into what is this policy that can be asked. The Bio-E3 policy is actually, it's basically like this: biotechnology for economy, environment and your employment. So how can you create all of these three things? That is what they have envisaged in this policy. Now, some of the chief sectors that they are going to focus, and I do feel if they do ask this, these pointers have to be mentioned ditto, because trust me, in the examiner's key also it's going to be there. The sectors that are involved in this Bio-E3 policy, or the sectors that they are going to focus on, is bio-based chemicals and enzymes. Okay, we have already said these are all the description of synthetic biology that I had earlier said. It's just that from synthetic, okay, I guess one person has joined. Will the PDF be shared? What normally happens in these sessions? Like, does the PPT get shared somewhere? I'm not sure. So we do get. Okay, fine. So then I'll figure out and I'll give it to the concerned people, whoever is, reaching it out to you. Okay. So it'll be shared. Yeah. If it's a normal thing, it'll be shared. Okay. Yeah. So now coming into this sectors of different sectors that are focused on your Bio-E3 policy. So bio-based chemicals and enzymes, functional foods and smart proteins. Look at this. This is the description. This is from the government side. They've said taste without cruelty. And this is a major thematic sector that is there in your Bio-E3 policy. Precision biotherapeutics. See, now these words might be difficult to mug up, but trust me, if this question comes, you can list this down and you will get more than the highest average mark. The reason being that a lot of people will generally write some general terms for all of these, but try recollecting these terms. Precision biotherapeutics, primarily meaning that for each person's, each genetic content, you need to have specific therapeutic needs. Therapy means that you are trying to cater to their only, like for example, people might say, okay, that person has fever, this person has fever, but the very fact that some of us are that same kind of strain of fever, for some of us it will stay for 10 days, for some of us it will be just 2 days. It shows there is a genetic variation in each of us that responds to that disease. So imagine for both of them, you're giving the same dose of medicine. It is not needed. So here, precision biotherapeutics means remedies that understand you. That means your genetic content. Then climate resilient agriculture. Krishi that makes earth happy. Carbon capture and utilization, recover to prosper. That means trying to capture the carbon dioxide and store it. Futuristic marine and space research. These are all the sectors that they have focused on Bio E3 policy. That means what are they doing over here? Use your synthetic biology. Using synthetic biology, create commercial products that can be used in all of these sectors. Okay, and now if sectors are all clear, what exactly or how exactly is this plan, or where are they planning to do all of this in? The Bio E3 policy hopes to create 3-4 different institutions. One is your Bio AI Hub. The next is your Bio Manufacturing Hub. Third is certain regulations and meeting the global standards. And fourth is a data governance framework. What exactly is all of this? Bio Artificial Intelligence Hub means that to understand, let me give you an example for this. See, very recently, last year's Nobel Prize, 2024 Nobel Prize, was actually, if you look at the different fields that were there, in your physiology and all, someone got it for your microRNA, which we will be discussing. But if you look at the chemistry prize that is there, the chemistry prize actually involved using AI to study protein structure. Understand? To study the different kinds of protein structure, how does protein in our body, how does it respond to certain stresses, etc. So now my point is they used AI to study protein. Now once you study protein, what are you going to do with it? You have to create some kind of a product or service that is useful for the humankind, right? That part is what is covered in your Bio E3 policy. So in this Bio Artificial Intelligence hubs, they are trying to use AI and enhance the understanding of biological systems, improve disease diagnosis and treatments. Once that is understood, you will take it to your Bio Manufacturing Hub, and here they will try to have a common usage of that information that is there. Okay, so commercial manufacturing facilities for researchers, startups, small and medium industries that are there, so that they can venture into these fields. Then, once these both are done, the Bio E3 policy is purely commercial in nature. You have to understand that. It's economy, employment, it's that way in nature. So, they have to ensure that these bio products that you are creating can be put into the global market also. And this is a drawback for a lot of products that are created in India, that we do not meet global standards. So, here what they are doing in this third part is this policy will ensure that there is coordination from different ministries, and they will ensure that whatever product we are trying to create will meet your global standards. Okay, and the final part is through this framework and discoveries, the idea is we will be storing whatever discoveries we are making, what is the intellectual property behind it, all of that will get stored, and that can be shared amongst your through a data governance framework. But the IPR, because we have to be very careful about the IPR, so that is also getting covered in your Bio E3 policy. Okay, so when you look at it as a whole, when you look at it as a whole, you will understand that we have focused on, and it's a very, very crucial, important policy for this matter, because we have our priorities sorted. We don't want biotech research alone, we want biotech research. After that, we want economy with it, and through the economy, we want employment. So, sectors are all clear. What is the issue of this policy? If it's a very policy-oriented question, then you have to discuss the issues also. See, one of the major issues of the policy is the fact that they have talked about creation of your, synthetic products, etc. But they haven't talked much about biosafety. Biosafety means what? When you are creating these synthetic products, you have to also ensure that there are no side effects, etc. that can be harmful. So, if the containment of synthetic organisms, if there is any biohazard related to it, those things are not clearly mentioned in the Bio E3 policy. Then coming into a regulatory gap. See, the Bio E3 policy is very highly visionary in nature. If it has to be successful, it needs very good cooperation amongst different bodies, which is your Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and even your Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. But these are bodies that constantly clash on different matters, so you need to have a cooperative setup between all of these three bodies. Then coming into the IPR issues, though it has touched on to the fact that the policy will have a data governance framework to ensure that, you know, your IPR and all is sorted. But here, sometimes the bioresources that we are using, if it is coming from certain traditional knowledge, etc., how to share the benefit of these bioresources to its native community. That is also not mentioned in your Bio E3 policy. Then coming into the fact of certain other ethical debates like what if the technology is getting misused in certain bioweapons, etc. That is also a concern which is not addressed in this policy. Now, with all of these concerns also, Bio E3 policy happens to be a much needed boost into the into the dry field of bioeconomy that is there. Not dry field, it's actually a very a field that has made so much of its own. With very less of government support. So now the government support has to reap much better benefits. So we have to wait and see for that. Now, certain other way forwards that can be attached to this policy if they do ask us. See, we have talked about bioeconomy. We have hoped that bioeconomy will lead to circular economy. That means what? There will not be wastage, etc. That is just a hope that we have. But here, again, one of the way forwards given by experts is that even when you're talking about bioeconomy, you have to adopt an idea of circular bioeconomy. That means that reuse, repair and recycle should be a very integral part of this synthetic biology that we are doing. Then coming to another way forward, we should have single window clearance of your certain products. That means implement a single window clearance system for all selected biomanufacturers. STEM talent, with all of this research and everything happening, it is bound to increase the employment opportunities of bioeconomy in our country, biotech in our country. So to try to absorb the STEM talent that we have into these opportunities rather than losing them out to other countries. So trying to retain 25% of your STEM talent within India for sustained growth. Then obviously have international collaborations with certain countries like your US, Japan, Australia, Finland and other European countries that have already made huge strides when it comes to your bioeconomy. So this, you know what is synthetic biology? If someone asks what are the applications of synthetic biology, don't look here and there. The exact applications that I mentioned in your, the previous slides of biotech, that is what you can use over there. Okay. So this completes your applications. What is the policy going to do? How is the policy going to boost your synthetic biotech? All of these things. How is the policy going to develop India? All of these angles are now covered in this part. Please do write it well if this question comes. The next topic that I want to discuss when it comes to your biotechnology and a probable area that could come is your CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR-Cas9. See, CRISPR-Cas9, there is obviously, you all know, we've studied it in our prelims that this is a gene editing tool. So let's quickly revise into it first. CRISPR is clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats. This is one part, and then there is a Cas9 enzyme along with it. Okay, and together they are a very revolutionary gene editing tool. Okay, they're a very revolutionary gene editing tool. What exactly is the functioning of your CRISPR-Cas9? In case you forgot, CRISPR-Cas9, as I just mentioned, is the proper precise cutting of your genetic material. Now to do that, the CRISPR-Cas9 has one more component called as your guide RNA or your gRNA. The guide RNA is something that is created from your labs. It's not present in our body. Based on this diagram is the best example of how to show this. So here, for example, there is a certain area that we want to cut off from your gene. So what you do is you create a guide RNA molecule that is very similar to this particular thing. A specially designed synthetic guide molecule, look at the word, synthetic guide molecule, finds the target DNA strand. Once the target DNA strand, it has gone near it, what happens is, it goes and attaches itself over there. Then the next thing you know is, once that attachment has happened, you have your Cas9 enzyme getting released. And then what happens? The Cas9 enzyme correctly cuts the necessary part that is needed. Once the Cas9 cuts, then what happened? That part is gone, and then by either the cell's normal repair system, or if you have another substitute that can be put over there, that can also be fixed into your genetic content. So Cas9 is the enzyme that acts as a pair of molecular scissors that can cut the strand at a very specific location. Guide RNA is designed to find and bind to a specific sequence in your DNA. This is what makes possible for very precise gene cutting with CRISPR-Cas9. So if I had to tell you the different applications of CRISPR-Cas9, this is again very clear. They are literally asking you the different applications of gene editing. But here, especially when they ask a CRISPR-Cas9 question, you have to add that word also in the point. Why? Because CRISPR-Cas9 at the end of the day is a gene editing tool. So CRISPR-Cas9 can be used in agriculture to create pest-resistant, disease-resistant crops that are there. So there is a CRISPR-edited rice that is resistant to bacterial blight. In the medicine sector, it can be used for gene therapy, developing personalized cancer treatments. Again, there are clinical trials that are happening for your sickle cell anemia, etc. that involve the genetic editing using CRISPR-Cas9. Then there is the animal husbandry field to improve certain livestock traits like your milk yield, disease resistance, etc. The gene-edited pigs resistant to the PRRS virus is also something that is very hopeful, because here again this CRISPR-Cas9 was used in the editing of genes of pigs, and they became resistant or immune against your PRRS virus. Then moving on to your infectious disease control, designing certain diagnostic tools like for example the CRISPR-based COVID-19 detection kit, industrial biotechnology, engineering microbes for biofuels, enzymes, bioplastics, etc. The modified yeast that I told you earlier. So think of any application where there is genetic editing, and then CRISPR-Cas9 that is also an application of your CRISPR-Cas9. So now the question comes as to what is India involved in any of this CRISPR-Cas9, or is India using CRISPR-Cas9 for its gene editing? So this is the Indian angle of CRISPR-Cas9. There are two important Indian angles. So first, let's look at the current CRISPR-Cas9. What are we using? In the current CRISPR-Cas9, the CSIR and your ICAR are using it to create certain CRISPR-edited rice varieties which have very low glycemic index that can be used for diabetic patients, disease-resistant rice, etc. Then also they are trying to create mustard and banana improvements through genome editing using CRISPR. So these are researches that are already happening. Along with that, you also see the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, IGIB, they had also created a CRISPR-based diagnostic test for COVID-19, which was the Feluda test. One such test was your Feluda test. So these are things that India is currently doing using CRISPR-Cas9. Adding on to it is another important thing where here, very recently, and this is the reason why I even picked CRISPR-Cas9, because CRISPR-Cas9, we all know, applications are there. We'll discuss the issues and everything very quickly. But then coming on to this, one Indian use we talked about. Another important achievement has happened with respect to India and CRISPR-Cas9. India has now used, or India has now devised a modified version of the CRISPR-Cas9. It was done by the Bose Institute under the Department of Science and Technology. They have developed something called as CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR-Cas9. What is CRISPR-Cas9? See here, you don't want to cut so you need CRISPR part to go and identify some gene content which is there. But you don't want the Cas9 enzyme to cut that part. You want to deactivate the Cas9 part. So what are you hoping to achieve over here? Why is the CRISPR-Cas9 so effective? CRISPR-Cas9 is so effective because you first have a guide RNA that will go and attach itself to the target DNA. Okay, that part is the one that is extremely precise. Once that precision thing goes and attaches, then it's easy for the Cas9 to go and cut. What has India tried to do over here is, India has tried to create a modified CRISPR-Cas9 tool where the Cas9 part, they don't want it to work. They just want the CRISPR part to work. So here they have developed a CRISPR-Cas9 or a deactivated Cas9 sort of a thing. In this version, the Cas9 protein is made inactive, meaning it can no longer cut the DNA. It still uses a guide RNA to find and attach to a specific DNA sequence. It acts like a gene switch by turning specific genes on or off without changing the DNA itself. Why? And this is an important thing you have to understand. When in that original structure, when the guide RNA goes and attaches itself to this part, this target DNA becomes dysfunctional as it is, becomes unfunctional. Then if you want to remove it and place a healthy strand is where you need the Cas9. But here they're like, let's deactivate the Cas9 part. Let's have this tool where you can just go and attach itself to this part and stop it there. The gene, in fact, will get when you don't want that gene's factors, you can go and attach it. When you want the gene's factors, gene's quality, you can take away the guide RNA. Okay, so this is an improvement, Indian achievement that has happened in this field, and that is also one of the reasons why I picked this, this topic which is there. So also, what is the use of this Cas9? It can enhance your plant resistance to heat, stress, pathogen attacks, etc. So this is your Indian achievement, second Indian achievement when it comes to CRISPR-Cas9. Now, thinking back, what are the different, we talked about the good stuff about CRISPR-Cas9. What are the pros? What are the offsides of it? One is that pros in the sense not the offsides. Pros are the good stuff about it. Okay, it has high precision, low cost and time, wide applications, and potential for disease eradication. This is just a small mind map for you to maybe combine all the points. So it has high precision, low cost and time, wide applications, and disease eradication. What are the issues associated with CRISPR-Cas9? This is one part. In case they specifically want to address it, they'll ask you and you have to explain in detail. One such thing is the ethical concerns of CRISPR-Cas9. You are editing, using this technology, you can end up editing human embryos, create certain germline modifications that can give rise to a phenomena called as your designer babies. And this is extremely bad when you look at your evolution from an evolution standpoint. So that is one such ethical concern. Then looking at off-target effects. Sometimes the edits happen, you are editing in one part, but you do not know if that one part goes, what might be the unintended, effects that might have, that can cause into certain other parts of your genome. Complete knowledge you should be having before you edit certain things. If not, it can create certain off-target effects. That means one part you are cutting very precisely. It's just that without this part, maybe some other part of the genome might not function properly. So this is a problem. Biodiversity risks. That means that when you do excessive gene editing, it could reduce your genetic diversity. You basically create very similar models that are there and genetic diversity reduces. Regulatory gaps. The laws on your genetic modified organisms, gene editings are still evolving. And again, when it comes to genetically modified organisms, we have very clear laws. But with gene editing, our laws still have a lot to achieve. And finally, the socio-economic concerns. Just like I mentioned, access to the technology and potential misuse in creating designer babies, creating very similar cookie cutter models. That means you have the same kind of humans getting created. So all of these things can be issues, because when that is very easily available, it can lead to certain racial problems, ethnic problems, etc. So that covers your CRISPR-Cas9. We discussed about, let's have a quick look. We started off with CRISPR-Cas9. We talked about what it is. Then we went on to discuss the different applications of CRISPR-Cas9, which is exactly the same applications. In case they change CRISPR-Cas9 and they ask applications of gene editing or the issues of gene editing, don't look anywhere else. These are the same points. Okay, so applications of gene editing, then the Indian uses of CRISPR, and again after the Indian uses of CRISPR, I talked about the recent development that is there, which is your CRISPR-Cas9. Okay. And then I talked about what are the general pros, which are all the good stuff about CRISPR, and then finally the issues of CRISPR-Cas9. I hope this area is now clear. Now we move on to the next probable topic, and the reason why this is picked as a probable topic is quite obvious, because this was this last year's Nobel Prize winning idea in physiology, your microRNA. So again, the tendency of UPSC to maybe pick a strain of thing from there could be there. That is the reason why I didn't want to leave any loose thread. So we'll discuss this microRNA. When it comes to until now what we've been discussing. So first we talked about biotech, different applications. Then I talked to you about synthetic biology, Bio-E3 policy. Then I talked to you about CRISPR-Cas9. In all of these things, what has been happening is you are changing, especially in synthetic biology, etc. You're changing some genetic content. Okay, you're cutting genetic content, you're replacing genetic content, etc. In your microRNA, it's quite different in the sense that this was actually related to something that is already existing in our body. We are not cutting genes or anything, they just observed. So in specifically when it comes to your microRNA, you will see that over here, these are certain structures that are there inside our body itself. It's just that for the Nobel Prize and everything, they have studied extensively about it. They were able to explain more features about this microRNA. Okay, so get that right. If they ask you a question about microRNA, don't start off by saying gene editing and all of these things. Nothing of that sort is happening in microRNA. Okay, let's have a quick read into what all you'll need over here. MicroRNA is in news because of the Nobel Prize for Medicine given to Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkin. MicroRNAs are small, highly conserved, non-coding RNA molecules that are there in your body. Now, I hope I don't have to explain what are coding RNA molecules or anything. I hope you've studied that for your prelims. For those who don't need a quick recollection, here we go. In your body, you have your DNA. DNA is constantly transcribed, or under the process of transcription, gets converted into RNA. That RNA is later on translated and a protein is created. Every single feature in your body, every single feature that is expressed in your body is because there is a protein corresponding to it. In fact, there is a protein corresponding to it, or maybe the protein is not there, so you don't have that feature. Got it? So where do you get this from? It all starts from your DNA. The DNA that is there, it will create a RNA molecule. That RNA molecule goes to an area in your cell called as your ribosome. In the ribosome, the RNA molecule codes for a protein. Got it? So, when I am saying an RNA molecule codes for a protein, this is the use of it. This is the final use of it. Now, what did I just mention to you some time ago? MicroRNA is a small, very conserved, non-coding RNA molecule. That means this microRNA cannot make protein of its own. They don't have any code or anything, but they're still there in our body. They do not code for proteins, but what they do is they regulate gene expression post-transcription. Sounds very Greek-wise, but understand what they're trying to say is this. In very simple terms, let's get to the bottom of what this microRNA is. Okay. So, until now, it was quite clear to us that there was a DNA. DNA is red. In our body itself, the DNA is split open, the DNA is red, and after the DNA is red, a corresponding messenger RNA is created, mRNA. That's different from your microRNA, okay? A messenger RNA is created. That messenger RNA goes all the way to your ribosome. Once the messenger RNA reaches to the ribosome is like, okay, messenger RNA has come, let me start my work, which is code for this messenger RNA. Now, what has happened is this messenger RNA is just like, it's coming and telling, hey, it's time for protein to create the protein. In the ribosome, the messenger RNA will be like, okay, so the DNA has sent this code. I have to now break the code. I have to end this because it's a secret code that has come. In the ribosome, they break the code, they change or they decipher the code, create an RNA for it, and that RNA thereafter goes to create a protein. So, what has happened? DNA, messenger RNA comes to the ribosome, creates a ribosomal RNA, and then from there creates a protein. But here what is happening is, sometimes our body itself does not want a certain feature to get expressed due to some reason. You do realize our body is very specifically trained to look for first a DNA, then a messenger RNA, then from the messenger RNA you have the ribosomal RNA, and then from the ribosomal RNA you have the protein. Now what happens is, after the transcription, once this messenger RNA comes to ribosome, what will happen is, the ribosome, in that ribosome itself, they will just go on creating, or they will have all of these microRNA over there that seem very similar to this messenger RNA. So, for example, if the messenger RNA has come out and the messenger RNA that we have is CGC. Okay. So, at the same time, in the ribosome, what is going to get apart from this, what is going to be there is so many other CGCs. CGC, small CGCs have just gotten created there. And now what happens? Now all the CGCs have come. The cell is like, okay, which one do I decode? Which one do I convert to ribosomal RNA? Because you're seeing so many CGCs. Got it? So what has happened over there? Your gene, which had to be expressed completely. Earlier earlier in the sense our knowledge was CGC comes, CGC gets coded to our RNA, and then the protein gets created, corresponding thing. But these guys found out that it's not just CGC coming in. Along with CGC, if the body does not want CGC to get expressed, what's going to be there? So many other CGCs are going to be there, which will regulate gene expression. Regulate gene expression means it is not so easy. It will not be very easy for that gene to get decoded or coded into a protein. If the gene is not coded into a protein, what's going to happen? That feature will not be expressed. So, microRNAs are small, highly conserved, non-coding RNA molecules that can regulate gene expression after the transcription process. microRNA primarily does the work called as gene silencing. The gene is not edited, the gene is not cut off, the gene is not done anything. It's just that the gene is still there, but the gene is not allowed to express if this microRNA is there. Understood? So this is what a microRNA is about, and this is what these guys found out. So I hope the working is now clear. I want you to understand the applications, and this is just me covering base for you over here. So if they ask you the applications of microRNA, in effect, what are they asking you? Effects of gene silencing or applications of gene silencing. When you look at all the fields that we have, every single field where gene editing could happen, your gene silencing can also happen. Understand? So again, you don't need some extra points over here, but nevertheless, I have put in some points which are the applications of either if they ask microRNA, I want you to write these, or if they ask you applications of gene silencing also, I want you to use these points itself. Don't study some extra points for these. Okay. So gene silencing you can use your microRNA you can use for non-invasive biomarkers. What is this non-invasive biomarkers? See, sometimes in our body, when we are having a certain disease, even before it gets expressed physically onto us or physiologically onto us, in our cells, in our genetic content, there is the indications that, okay, this person might have cancer or this person might have a genetic disease, etc. Those biological markers that are there in our body is called as generally biomarkers. Now, I'm saying that whenever there is this microRNA's numbers very much in our body, or the microRNA's numbers are very less in our body, it can be used as a sign or it can be used as a biomarker to understand if someone has a disease or not. For example, if there is the presence of a lot of microRNAs, miRNAs of 21, microRNA, these are numbers given to these microRNAs, okay? So microRNA 155, if all that is there in our body, it is indicative of cancer. So again, non-invasive biomarkers. Cardiovascular disease, for example, if there is so much of microRNA in our bloodstream, again, in certain cases, it can indicate heart failure or any kind of heart attack related features that are there. Then, microRNA also mimics. That means, in any case, whenever you want to have or do certain gene regulation, to suppose, for example, in our body already the gene is getting regulated by your microRNA. Now, I want to have that same kind of gene regulation for another feature. Okay, but for that other feature, our body is not producing a microRNA. What can I do? I can create artificial microRNAs outside and put it into my cell. See, that's a very advanced form of research. Okay, so again, this microRNA mimics or artificially supplied beneficial microRNAs can be put into our cells. Okay, then for example, one very famous use of your microRNAs is to increase the color of flowers, to increase the yield of flowers. So what happens is, if a certain feature, because there's a lot of microRNA, that feature is not getting expressed. Suppose in a plant, the yield of the plant is not getting expressed fully. Why? Because there might be so many microRNAs. So what do? You can maybe remove set of microRNAs so that the feature will get expressed. Understand? So get this, you can tamper with these microRNAs from now on because this is an open field. But understand, any feature that you hope to achieve by genetic editing, genetic silencing, you can achieve by microRNA. So don't think that, oh my God, suddenly microRNA has asked, I don't have any points to write. You have all of these points to improve the yield and disease resistance. It's used to silence specific plant genes. It is used for early diagnostic kits. This is more or less, in fact, this specific diagnostic kit that we are developing, this is actually developed even in India for cervical cancer. We are actually developing a microRNA based cervical cancer detection kit. That is again an Indian innovation that is there. Okay, so I hope this part of biotech is now clear, where we have discussed in detail the different kinds of different areas from where we could probably have questions. Okay, now without much delay, let's go into our most important part. Space has brought about 4 questions in the last 7 years. That's a huge number for an area like science and tech, where every year only 2 questions are getting asked. Yeah, okay, so here we can see over here that the last few questions that have come in spaces. One is simple questions like what are asteroids, how real is the threat of them causing extinction of life, so on. Then there's a question about the James Webb Telescope and what is its predecessor, etc. There was a very major question about your India's 3rd moon mission, which is your Chandrayaan 3. Look at the detail in which this question is asked. What is the main task of India's 3rd moon mission which could not be achieved in its earlier mission? List the countries that have achieved this task. Introduce the subsystems or the payloads that were there in it. Explain the role of Virtual Launch Control Center. Look at the sub-parts of this question. According to me, when you prepare for an Indian mission related question, this is the detail. This is like, consider this like a model. Like, this is how detailed you should be preparing for a mains answer. Because see, Chandrayaan 3, anybody can bluff about the moon mission and certain things, but the moment they ask you what are the payloads, you are blank. Because I don't think we study it in that precision for your prelims. So this is again one area, or whenever we are discussing any missions, this is the detail in which we'll be going into, just so that we are prepared. Then coming into what is India's plan to have its own space station and how will it benefit us. These are the past questions that have come about from your section of space. Based on these past questions, past areas, and the current scenario that is there, I have fixed few probable areas. Microgravity, its applications, like that asteroid question came, no? So similarly, microgravity, and again we know even for your prelims this year, microgravity got asked. So something of that sort can be expected. So that is one. Second thing is something called as space situational awareness. The details about what India is doing in it, why is it needed, etc. Space-based internet, that is also something that is very highly popular in the recent times. And then finally, Aditya L1 mission and certain parts related to it. 2 parts that I have put in the probable areas, but because you are very fresh from your prelims in classes, you would be familiar with this, your Gaganyaan mission and Navik. Okay, so I'm leaving that up to you guys, because we do have a time constraint and we cannot discuss all of these things. These 2 missions that are there, the Gaganyaan and Navik, that you will have to just go through your prelims notes and etc. as to what is the application of it, etc. But the rest 4 topics we'll be discussing here. Now, the first thing that I want to discuss with you is about the microgravity. What exactly is microgravity? Let's go into it. First of all, microgravity is a condition in which objects appear to be weightless and experience very small accelerations compared to your normal gravity. Okay, so it is not, some people say microgravity is zero gravity, but that is not exactly right. It is not zero gravity, it's just that the effects of gravity are reduced. There is no condition where it is, at least when you say microgravity, you have your gravity. It is not zero gravity. It's just that the effect of gravity, because gravity is present only in very negligible amounts, what happens is the effect of gravity is very much reduced. For example, it will be typically about 10 raised to minus 6 grams. Why are we bothered about microgravity? We are bothered about microgravity because whenever you have any kind of missions where you have it going about the earth, going around, orbiting the earth, and which is there in maybe your low Earth orbit or so, what's going to happen is, in all of these cases, you can experience, or the humans and the objects that are there in the spacecraft at that point will experience microgravity. So you need to know, because you are going to send humans and everything into space, you need to know what is the effect of microgravity on humans and systems, etc., so that you can be prepared for it. Okay, so microgravity is that a phenomena where your objects appear to be weightless and experience very small accelerations compared to your normal gravity, and it is generally seen when you have objects orbiting the Earth. For example, in your International Space Station, you will be experiencing microgravity. In your Axiom missions, you will be experiencing your microgravity. Whenever India is going to have a future human space flight mission, in those missions also, you will be experiencing microgravity. It is at this point it becomes obvious to us as to why do we have to study about it. We have to study about it because, first of all, for scientific research, we have to understand whatever experiments that are possible on Earth, if those same experiments can be done over there on space. What will be the effect of it? So, for example, it enables the experiments that can study fluid dynamics, combustion, crystal growth, metallurgy, biological systems, etc. So, if we can do all of that in space also, would be proven with your microgravity research. Then human physiology, it helps us to understanding microgravity will help us understand how the human body reacts to long duration space travel. Will you have muscular atrophy? Will the effect or the strength, the tensile strength of your muscles reduce? Bone density, what is going to happen to it? If there's going to be any kind of immune system changes, all of that can be learned if we study microgravity. Material science. See, if you look at in Earth, for example, if you take a salt crystal and then you put some salt water over there, what happens is you can see the crystallization process. Now, it is one area that a lot of people are interested in is not just to make salt crystals, but to manufacture ultra pure crystals, semiconductors, etc. Without having, normally on Earth, when you are doing this process, you will have the impurity related to certain factors. But there you have a condition where there's no gravity, very less gravity. So that might help you to understand in creating ultra pure crystals, etc. Then coming into drug development, protein crystallization in microgravity, it can lead to, if we can create, this is one very interesting field. Like, we are already doing a lot of research in, creating certain proteins on Earth. Now, the hope is in microgravity, their results will be more accurate or precise, or will not involve any kind of unwanted impurities. So this is something that is again focused in microgravity. So for example, protein crystallization in microgravity is something that is hoped or that is expected to yield better results if performed in your negligible gravity conditions. Then agriculture in space, and this is very important because this is what the Axiom 4 mission is recently trying to figure out. What is the effect of microgravity on plant growth? If those seeds will survive. For example, very recently in the Axiom 4 mission, they have sent moong dal seeds, etc. in the mission to understand how will the crop or how will the plant growth get affected in microgravity. Why are we bothered about plant growth in microgravity? Because later on, when it comes to your Gaganyaan mission, it's going to be relevant. In your future human space flight missions, that even after Gaganyaan, it's going to be relevant. At the very broad scenario where there is a situation of space colonization, then it's going to be relevant to understand how certain other systems. Now, we are now in microgravity from what we have created in your spacecrafts, but there could be certain other planetary systems where you can have microgravity. So what will be the condition of materials and plants in case there are any kind of life over there? What will be their conditions? To understand all of these, microgravity research becomes important. Finally, to do technology testing, spacecraft systems, robotics, sensors, etc. that are currently just tested on Earth, if we are able to test it in space, we'll be able to know if we can deploy it onto Moon, Mars, or any of your other planets. So this is all what makes microgravity important. Now coming into what India is doing when it comes to microgravity research. I would say, if at all a space related question comes, you explain the space part of it, like that asteroid question, for example. They have asked what is asteroids, is it harmful for us and everything. But at the end, after you tell about all of that, you have to mention what are India's missions focused on asteroid detection and deflection, etc. You have to include that point. Coming to India's role in microgravity study, you will see that the Axiom 4 mission is one such place where India has played a role. And even in the future Gaganyaan spacecraft, we are devising certain systems to study microgravity. Axiom 4 mission, you have enabled microgravity research in material science, biology, etc. They're also checking the survival of certain water bears. It's a kind of organism that is there. Survival of water bears in space is being checked in Axiom 4. Again, to understand the effects of gravity onto that organism. Microgravity onto that organism. Effects of 6 crop varieties, including your moong dal and cyanobacteria in microgravity conditions. Critical hands-on experience for India's planned Gaganyaan mission. So if we are successful in these experiments, we might be able to use the learnings of it in Gaganyaan. In Gaganyaan, what are you planning? In Gaganyaan, there are going to be biological experiments for the study of microbes, tissues, and human physiology. Experiments for material science to understand the behavior of alloys, fluids, and all in microgravity, and also technology validation, that is life support systems, space grade instruments, etc. All of these can also be incorporated, or it is already planned to be incorporated in your Gaganyaan mission. Now, apart from that, not just these two things, even in the previous missions that we've had, for example, in your SRE, which is your space capsule recovery experiment, which is there, which wanted to demonstrate your re-entry technology, etc. There also we had planned, or we had studied a little bit effects of microgravity. Suborbital platforms, for example, sounding rockets like your RH-200, RH-300, they also generally carry microgravity experiments to study the effects. And it's possible to study only for a few minutes, but still they do use those techniques out there. Then Indian scientists have also participated in the protein crystallization studies that were taken place in your ISS. The reason being that we were planning for the human spaceflight mission. So this is what is about microgravity. What is microgravity? The applications of microgravity, or why we need to know about microgravity, and India's role in microgravity studies. Okay, so I hope that covers it. Next, we go into understanding space situational awareness. This is the next topic that I have picked. Space situational awareness. What is exactly space situational awareness? So, space situational awareness refers to the capability to detect, track, catalog, and predict the movement of all man-made and natural objects in the Earth's orbit. It can be satellites, space debris, near-Earth asteroids, etc. And to understand the space environment that may affect your space assets. So what all is there? You have two parts. Space situational awareness. That means you're trying to understand your space environment in a complete manner. How are you planning to understand the space environment? By having the capability to detect, track, catalog, and predict the movement of different kinds of structures, And then on the other hand, also understand the effect of, maybe for example, you have your sun and the effect of that sun onto your different satellites. All of that also can be studied in your space situational awareness. India hopes to have space situational awareness or achieve space situational awareness. The question is, why is it important? Why do we need space situational awareness? We need space situational awareness. Why? Because there is a growing problem of space traffic. This is something you would have studied in your prelims point itself. You would have heard about the term Kessler's syndrome. Kessler syndrome primarily, and that is related to your space debris. So again, when you write such an answer on your space situational awareness, ensure that this point is also included in it. Now coming to your Kessler's syndrome, the point is that there is a very exponential rise of your space waste. The reason why it's called as exponential rise of your space waste is because one piece of debris, it will go and hit into another, and it might, you cannot account for how many pieces it will be moving into. It will not be okay, one went and hit and it became two. No, it's going to be much more exponentially higher in number, and this process, when repeated over and over again, can lead to a very highly cluttered space environment. Okay, so this is what Kessler syndrome is. Now, coming back to our topic of why is it important to understand or to have space situational awareness. First thing is because of the growing space traffic. Thousands of satellites in your low Earth orbit, mid Earth orbit, and your geostationary Earth orbit or your high Earth orbit are there. Collisions are increasing, or the chances of collisions are increasing very rapidly. You have certain mega constellations like your Starlink, where you have over 36,000 satellites in your low Earth orbit. So all of these can increase the chances of space, or it is a very highly growing space traffic. If uncontrolled, what happens is it can lead to this one, space, or what you say, Kessler's syndrome. Space debris threat. There are almost over 36,000 trackable objects in space, which are much smaller if you look at it. These are, when you look at the size of it, it is actually considerably bigger than 10 centimeter. And then those objects go and hit others and create debris that is much smaller in size, leading to millions of small debris pieces that can damage your spacecraft. Then coming on to protection of critical assets, your communication, navigation, etc. All of these things can get affected if there is a chance of space waste going and hitting each other. So again, that is also a problematic thing. Moving on to national security, when you have space situational awareness, it is possible for us to understand if our space, if our satellites are getting spied upon, if there is anything that can cross into our, or can any data that can be misused from our orbits, etc. All of those can also be checked. Space situational awareness helps monitor potential anti-satellite tests, suspicious objects, etc. Then coming on to your human spaceflight mission, if you have space situational awareness only, you can hope that the crewed missions that you are sending will come back safe, because otherwise what is going to happen is they might have collision with your debris. Then moving forward, your global norms and responsibility. There are certain treaties like your Outer Space Treaty, etc. But again, these treaties are meant to cover prevention of debris, etc. But nobody actually bothers right now. But again, if you are a country that is focusing on space situational awareness, you will try to put or implement those provisions in your activities also. Okay, so this is why space situational awareness is important, is related to this much area. Then going on to the different Indian initiatives for your space situational awareness. when you talk about the Indian initiatives that are there, one of the major things that come about is your Project Netra. Project Netra is actually started way back. It's the Network for Space Object Tracking and Analysis. Network for Space Object Tracking and Analysis. The idea of Project Netra is to create radar systems with over 1,500 kilometer range, have optical telescopes, etc., that can be used for tracking, and using all of this data to have a correct estimate of what is going to come towards our satellites, what is going to move away, all of these things. So you have data processing centers, radar systems, and even optical telescopes for your different kinds of satellite tracking. Now, this is one project that we have. Apart from that, if you remember, this is again something you would have studied for your prelims last year. Your POEM platform, which tried to ensure that the 4th stage of your PSLV gets converted into an orbiting sensor-based experimental module. Okay, so ideally in the normal cases, what would happen is the PSLV would be there, and in the 4th stage of PSLV, which is there, what happens is this 4th stage of PSLV would remain like a space debris over there. Now, India wanted to avoid such a situation, and what India did is, instead of putting that PSLV, that space debris there itself, what they have done is, they have tried to ensure that this 4th stage of PSLV gets converted into an orbiting module. Orbiting module means something wherein you can have different experiments, and it will be given a push so that it will start moving around the Earth. So now what has happened, instead of it just becoming a non-trackable space waste, it's being put to use. Otherwise, it would have just gone about lying in the space and causing harm to some other satellites that is out there. Okay, so again, this POEM platform was also an initiative taken up by India in view of your space situational awareness. Then coming on to the next one, there is something called as your Mission Shakti. The Mission Shakti actually had demonstrated India's anti-satellite ability, that shows about how India can maybe go and even destroy certain satellites. So we send a trial satellite, and we send another satellite that can go and maybe destroy it. So we have shown to the world that yeah, we are capable of this, but again apart from that itself, what they also had envisaged is, okay, if we were going to do this, how are we going to track the space waste after it? So they followed Mission Shakti by a debris tracking operation also. So again, India is trying to be a very responsible user of your space environment, and India is one of those countries that feature, there is something called as a Space Situational Awareness Index that is published by your World Economic Forum. India hopes to be like a top country when it comes to over there. The reason being that India's ISRO is very heavily focused on trying to ensure responsible, sustainable space missions. Okay. Apart from all of this also, we have had data exchange with US Space Command, France's CNS, etc. to reduce the space waste. There are also plans for a dedicated space situational awareness control center located in Bangalore. So again, that is also in the right direction. Now the question comes about, we are so bothered about all of these things, but then what are the major challenges that we are facing? Starting off with our challenges, you have to understand some of the major challenges come from the fact that it's because you have, at least let's take, when you look at the list of countries that are involved in space, some of them are up and coming countries. Then you have your US, your Japan, your France, UK, Australia. These are all countries are already in the space scene, and for every one satellite that India is trying to track down and reduce the debris, you have a Starlink that will create 40,000 satellites into the orbit. That means that everybody should have a common guideline as to what should be the responsible space environment usage. That is still not there in the world. So starting off with some of the challenges of space situational awareness. The proliferation of space debris, that means the past satellite breakups that were there, the anti-satellite tests that have taken up, the different kinds of collisions of satellites. There's already a collision that has happened in 2009. Iridium satellite had gone and hit Cosmos satellite. So this kind of collisions that are there. So space debris is already increasing as it is, and we need space situational awareness to counter it, but it's not something that is uniformly agreed upon. Then you have certain mega constellations like your Starlink, OneWeb, etc., where you have thousands of satellites crowding your single orbits itself. Okay. Then limited tracking infrastructure. You need more ground-based radars, telescopes and space-based sensors. You have to constantly track what is going to come and hit your satellites. That again is an extra cost on to all of these things. But if everybody could be responsible about it, this is a cost that we could actually cut short on. But again, right now there is a limited tracking infrastructure. Lack of global data sharing. Many countries keep their data classified. So there is no uniform, as I've been going on saying from the beginning, there is no uniform space situational awareness framework. Then coming up into the new threats that we face. For example, your different kinds of cyber attacks that could happen, your different co-orbital inspection of satellites, spying on satellites. All of these things are additional threats apart from your space situational awareness, and those start taking more priority than your space situational awareness. Finally, the space weather effects. You can have your solar storms, etc., that might cause an unwanted impact onto this space debris. Again, that is also a challenge that is there for your space situational awareness. So I hope this topic is also clear. What is space situational awareness? Why do we need space situational awareness? What is Indian initiatives that are taken up for space situational awareness? And what are the challenges that are there? So every challenge that you write, I hope by now you are in the habit of writing, when you write challenges itself, how to follow it up by way forward. I give detailed challenges. So for example, when I say also one of the major way forwards of this topic would be to create a unified structure between all the space exploring countries, to put a tab onto your mega constellations, have combined countries combining together to create tracking infrastructure, have better global data sharing on what satellites are in what orbits. All of these could be the way forward when it comes to space situational awareness. Now moving on to the next topic, we have to talk about space-based internet. It's a common progression because what has happened is we have talked about Starlink right now, and you know the reason why Starlink, I hope you've studied that for prelims in detail. One of the reasons why Starlink is sending these 30,000 satellites into space is because it wants to ensure uninterrupted, extremely fast internet coverage to the entire world. This is what it hopes to do. That is why you have these many satellites in your low Earth orbit. So begs the question as to what is space-based internet? Does India have any role in it? Why do we need space-based internet, etc.? So have a quick discussion about this. First of all, space-based internet means trying to provide internet connectivity to users on Earth through a network of satellites in space. That means rather than relying on your ground infrastructure, normally if you have your normal internet comes through fiber optic cables, cell towers, etc. So you're not relying on any ground-based infrastructure to get your internet. You're relying on satellite infrastructure. Doesn't mean that you don't have anything on the ground. The idea is the internet is given to you by satellites. Okay. So providing internet connectivity to users on Earth through a network of satellites in space than relying on solely on your ground-based infrastructure like fiber optic cables or cell towers. Your satellites can be in your low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, or your geostationary orbit. Low Earth orbit means you are looking at systems that are currently quite famous, which are your Starlink and OneWeb. Medium Earth orbit means you are looking at O3b networks. Geostationary orbit means you are looking at your traditional communication satellites like your GSATs. Okay, so these are the different. So traditionally, India has been involved in this GSAT and etc. because we were like, okay, let's have internet from your high Earth orbits. But I hope you've studied the drawback of having high internet in your high Earth orbit is the fact that the latency will increase. That means the amount of time needed for certain receiving of signals and transmitting it back, that will increase. So that is not very ideal. But on the other hand, if it is in the high Earth orbit, the entire internet coverage can be maybe done. The good points are that it can be done by much lesser number of satellites, and it will not be interfered. It will not be in the highly clustered low Earth orbit. These are all the good points, but here you can observe the fact that Starlink wanted to reduce the latency to a maximum, like very minimal point. This is the reason why Starlink hopes to put it all in the low Earth orbit. Now, let's quickly, I do feel if they ask a question about space-based internet, they would expect you to tell about how it works, okay? So, how does it actually work? First of all, you have your satellites over there. On the ground station, you will have something called as your ground station. Then you will have your user terminal and you have your router and your modem and everything over here. Okay. So what's going to happen is first you have your internet that is there. The internet service provider, whoever is the internet service provider, will transmit a signal to your satellite. Okay. Which then returns to the user using a captive dish. Okay. This dish is linked to the user's modem. And from the modem, it connects to the different things that are there. Okay. Why do you think this became so trendy recently? One, obviously there were a lot of drawbacks. We'll study the comparison also, but there were a lot of drawbacks of your general fiber optics. But apart from that, along with this space-based internet, one other thing that came up recently is something called as Internet of Things. Internet of Things. That means that you have not just your mobile phones that are, smart devices. You have your fridge, your washing machine, your air conditioner. All of these can have the potential to get connected to the internet and work remotely, work in a smarter way. That means what? The number of devices that can work on internet increased. Now, when the number of devices increase, your normal fiber optic cables and all have to be, because anytime you need internet, the optic cables have to be drawn to each of these, which is a very tedious job. This is where the idea that, okay, for let's say there is in the future, we can imagine even a scenario where there is a community of 100 houses and the 100 houses have all of these Internet of Things. To service the internet for these 100 houses, you have a micro satellite over there. Understand? So what is going to happen? You don't have to have all those cables running around. You don't have to dig up for all of these things. You can service the internet using your satellites and you can service it to a lot more devices. Understand? So this is what is hoped to be achieved, because you see, none of these connections are through wires. These are waves getting transmitted. So you don't have your wired communication happening, and this is considered to be much more reliable. Okay, so here you can see this process every time they want. For example, now I am in this smartphone over here. I want the internet. I will approach the router modem. Then this will go to the user terminal. The user terminal will pass a signal to the satellite. The satellite will pass a signal to the ground station. The ground station will give a request for the internet. Again, the same process. Okay, so just remember this diagram in case space-based internet gets asked. So this is the working of your space-based internet. Begs the question as to why we need space-based internet, or what is the comparison. In case they ever ask you space-based internet, if they ask you the advantages of it or the disadvantages of all of these things, you can always compare it with the past tech. I mean, for a country like India, fiber optics is not a past technology. A large majority of our internet still comes from your fiber optics itself. Okay, but for a lot of developed countries, yes, they are moving on to space-based internet. Let's have a look at what is happening with, or what is the comparison that is there. First of all, the comparison starts with the coverage. Okay, so we have fiber optics on one side and you have space-based internet on the other. When it comes to the fiber optics is limited by ground infrastructure. That means in certain very remote rural areas, even now, if we are not having internet, it's because there have not been cables over there. They are not able to draw the cables through those areas, remote, rural, rugged areas. But imagine, when you have space-based internet, that problem gets solved, because you don't have to draw these wires over there. You just have to ensure that the necessary modem and the routers and everything are fixed onto those areas so that the people over there can get the internet. So space-based internet means you can have global coverage, including your oceans, desert, mountains, whatever rural or remote areas. In fact, this is what Starlink hopes to achieve. Okay, then coming into the deployment time. Deployment time means the amount of time that requires you to set up all of this so that the area can get internet. When it comes to your fiber optics or towers, it takes years to lay the cable and get internet. But when it comes to space-based internet, it's very relatively quicker. Constellations can be deployed relatively quickly when it comes to your space-based internet. Resilience. When it comes to fiber optics, because it is on the ground, what happens is it can be vulnerable to disasters like earthquakes, floods, damaging cables, etc. I'm not saying in the space it's completely immune or anything, because we just talked about space debris and everything, but it is less affected by certain terrestrial disasters. Coming to the latency, fiber optics have very low latency, but they depend on local networks. That means because the cable is drawn on, they have low latency. But what happens is, if you are comparing the space-based internet, only in the low Earth orbit can you have your low latency. Most of the other things that are there, they still have very high latency. So that is a comparison, that's a drawback that the space-based internet has. Coming to the scalability, if tomorrow if we want to ensure that all of India gets your 5G network, it's going to be extremely difficult to scale the entire thing to all India, because in the case of fiber optics, it's limited by physical infrastructure. But once it comes to space-based internet, any point you want to add, today you want to add India fully, then tomorrow you want to give internet to Sri Lanka, day after you want to do it for, in the course of time you want to give it to Myanmar. All you have to do is ensure that there are more satellites being put into the space orbit. You can expand your space-based internet, you can scale your space-based internet. Okay, so this is the reason why space-based internet is considered as the next thing, the next hip thing to be. But even then, we'll talk about India's innovations and everything, and after that I'll talk to you about why India needs this and India's initiatives and what is the drawback and all of these things. So let's explore this part. First of all, why do you think this space-based internet would be so crucial for India? India is a country that you would have already studied in this economy and different kinds of social empowerment topics. India is a country that hopes to achieve a lot by having complete digital inclusion of its population. Okay, so digital inclusion means that everybody should be able to access internet and access the different government services via internet. Okay, so to have this complete digital inclusion, one of the first crucial steps is to ensure that everybody can access internet, and this is something that this problem can be easily solved by your space-based internet. So bridges the rural-urban divide. Then coming into every other good points with related to normal space tech. For example, disaster management. Whenever any ground networks, you would have seen anytime there's a flood or any landslide or something, people say that area has been completely cut out from the world. They're not able to get onto the internet or anything. Why? Because the cables have been destroyed. The towers that are providing the internet have been destroyed. But imagine in such a scenario, if you had space-based internet, you have a backup or you have a system that will not get affected by that particular natural disaster. And India is a country that has a lot of natural disasters in different parts of the world, in different parts of our country. So yes, this also becomes useful for us. When it comes to defense and strategic use, if at all you have your armed forces in remote areas, and they need a crucial transmission of data. At that point, you cannot rely on fiber optics. You can rely on your space-based internet. Maritime and aviation, the internet on ships, aircraft, internet when you go into very remote areas like polar regions can be ensured by your space-based internet. Then finally, even coming into smart agriculture, remote education. So this is all in line with that first part. Once the population of India is digitally included, it has a direct impact on poverty reduction, on hunger eradication, etc. On better governance. Why? Because you are getting empowered with information. You know, if you don't get a certain government subsidy that is there, whom to contact, you have all of this very accessible to you. So the first point itself is going to be creating widespread change, and all of the others. So you can maybe explain that first point from whatever you've learned in social empowerment also, and that can be in detail. So this is all the importance for India, and because it is so important for India, India has also taken certain initiatives to ensure space-based internet. Now, on our own front, indigenously, what we have done is we have already put forward certain high throughput satellites. High throughput satellites are like satellites like your GSAT-11, GSAT-19, GSAT-29, etc. that can support very high data capacity. So this is something that we have done, but understand these satellites, when all of them went into your high Earth orbit, so obviously they are marked by high latency. Okay. Apart from this, India is also actively supporting your OneWeb, because Bharti is in India you have certain, OneWeb is a low Earth satellite internet company. In India, Bharti Airtel is actually supporting OneWeb's functions, so that when OneWeb is finally fully functional, that we might be able to access, we will be able to access those OneWeb services in our country. Now, apart from that, you would have heard about the InSpace organization. InSpace actually calls for private participation in space. Private participation in space, and India is very welcoming to any other private partners who want to come and collaborate with respect to the space-based internet. So India is taking up some initiatives, but at the same time, there are certain challenges associated with India's space-based internet. One of the first challenges is, let's talk from the present scenario. One major challenge is that when it comes to creating, I showed you the picture, right? So there's a user terminal There is a dish satellite that is there. I mean, a dish coverage that is there. Then you have a satellite. The satellite part is fine, but then when it comes to these user terminals or different antennas that are there, they are still expensive, and this becomes an affordability problem. Second thing is, India, as I just told you, is so focused so much on your space situational awareness. But again, focusing on space internet would in turn put a lot of space debris into the space environment. So space debris is a problem that we have. Spectrum allocation. Again, you just cannot just put satellites and hope that the internet will come. You need to have specific spectrums through which, or specific set of wavelengths through which data transmission can happen. That again is something that needs to be worked out. Last thing is regulation and security. How to prevent misuse, ensure cyber security, etc. for these satellite-based internet, space-based internet. That is again something we have to focus. Then coming on to the current thing. So you might be thinking, okay, if this affordability and everything is an issue, why don't we rely on certain services like your Starlink? Now again, Starlink has applied for license and everything in India. India has still not guaranteed has not granted the licenses that Starlink requires to function in our country. Primarily because India is citing certain security reasons that might be there. Got it? So again, on that front also, we do have a challenge. If we rely on a foreign player for internet, we've had such experiences in the past where maybe in some crucial scenarios, they might not provide us with the necessary internet service. So this is also the reason why India is not relying on foreign players for space-based internet. Coming to the Indian initiatives for it, as you can see, the Indian initiatives are there, but still it is not still up to the mark to provide complete internet service to the entire country. And this is the reason why space-based internet remains a far-fetched path. And because of this, again, digital inclusion and all of those bigger goals suffer. Okay, so I hope space-based internet is also clear. Now let's go into the last topic that we'll be discussing from space, which is your Aditya L1 mission. Okay, so again, when it comes to your Aditya L1 mission, the primary things that we need to get across is that this is India's first dedicated solar observatory mission. It was launched by ISRO on 2nd September 2023. Okay, and it positioned itself on the L1 point between the Earth and the Sun. In case they ask you what is the L1 point, I hope you know it is the gravitationally safe point where the gravitational pull of both the Earth and the Sun remains somewhat equal onto the spacecraft and doesn't pull it to either of the celestial bodies. Okay, and Aditya L1 mission happened to be located somewhere around 1.5 million kilometers from the Earth. Okay, now this is your Aditya L1 mission. Obviously, the next thing comes about, as I told you, where you have to get prepared for this. What are the different payloads that Aditya L1 carried? Now, at this point is where if they ever ask you a diversion and they ask, how is the Aditya L1 comparing to Parker Solar Probe? Because both of them were launched somewhat, in a way, for a very similar objective. And this is where one of the first thing happens to be there, that Parker Solar Probe is going to travel much more nearer to the Sun, to the point where the Sun, I hope you know the different layers, the Parker Solar Probe will actually fly through the corona region of your Sun. Okay, the upper atmosphere region of the Sun will actually be traversed by your Parker Solar Probe. Aditya L1 mission is actually primarily a Sun observatory mission. That means it is not going to go near the Sun, it's going to be at a safe distance and it's going to observe certain phenomena that is there. So one thing is the distance, second thing is the purpose. Here on your Parker Solar Probe, you had just 4 experimental modules. In your Parker Solar Probe, look at the number of modules that are there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, 7 payloads primarily because its major function was observation, photography, etc. Okay, what are the major payloads in the Aditya L1 mission? There is the WELC, which is visible emission line. See, again, if you write the short form itself, it is a big deal. Okay, so it's very difficult to recollect all of these. If you don't remember the full thing also, at least try to mug up some of these short forms so that you have some pointers to write if this question gets asked. So WELC is your visible emission line coronagraph. The WELC actually is used to observe the sun's corona. It was developed by IIA Bangalore. Then you have SUIT, which is Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope. Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope means that it is primarily used for photosphere and the chromosphere of the sun. Then you have ASPEX, which is Aditya Solar Wind Particle Experiment. That is to measure the solar wind composition and the variations that are there. Then you have the PAPA, which is your Plasma Analyzer Package for Aditya, which is study low energy solar wind electrons. Then you have magnetometer, which is to measure the magnetic field at your L1 point. You have a SOLEX, which is your soft X-ray spectrometer. It is to monitor the X-ray emissions from sun. Then you have the HELIOS, which is high energy L1 orbiting X-ray spectrometer, which is again to monitor the hard X-rays that are there. So either try to remember some of those short forms, or if you have some idea about the objectives, that will also serve, because but if they ask a very specific question, what were the different payloads, then you are done for, you have to remember these different payloads. Okay. Again, there's not much of logic or anything to it. These are basic mug-up material that you will have to keep revising if you need all of the 7 listed out. Okay. Then, why did we need? That is always the question that gets asked. Why do we need such a system, or why did we have to have, Aditya L1 mission? What was the purpose of it? See, whenever they ask you the purpose of something, start off with that astronomical body which is there, whichever is the structure that we are learning. So, for example, one of the first things is that the sun and the physics surrounding the sun has been quite very enigmatic to us, as in like there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. One of the such mysteries is the fact that the sun's, if you look at the outer atmosphere and the inner atmosphere of the sun, ideally the outer atmosphere should be, when you look at the temperatures, the outer atmosphere should be less hotter than the inner atmosphere. But as an anomaly, what has happened? The outer atmosphere happens to be more hotter than the inner thing. So this is an anomaly, and that is something that we need to understand. Second thing is, again, as you know, every star has a certain life cycle, and understanding the life cycle of the star that we are based on will help us understand what is going to be the future of your solar system. Then, so this is your first point, this is your second point. The third point is the fact that, again, the sun has so many interesting features like your sunspots, coronal mass ejection, solar flare, solar wind, etc. When I'm talking about solar flare and winds, understand solar flares, especially in the recent times, we have even experienced a X-type solar flare. X-type solar flare means this kind of solar flare of the highest intensity we have experienced on Earth. So all of understanding the sun will help us understand these phenomena also better. These are the first technical points you can write, and then coming on to the other points. First of all, once you understand these solar phenomena, you can create certain early warning systems for your solar storms, etc. That is one very important thing. So, early warning systems means you can, it's considered that whenever these solar phenomena happen, it can lead to so much of energy getting out from the sun that it might affect your satellite communication. It might destruct certain satellites, etc. One, because of the fact that a lot of satellites are, it's located over there and they rely on solar power for their electricity. That is one of the things. And otherwise also, because the sun gives out all of these magnetic particles, etc., it can interfere with the normal waves that these satellites are transmitting. So it can affect your satellite communication, and we have your NAVIC, GSAT, etc. all put into space. So early warning of solar storms to protect our satellites. It also helps mitigate any signal disruptions that are happening when it comes to aviation, shipping and defense operations. Also, by being involved in Aditya mission, India hopes to be a very key or play a very key role in your heliophysics. Heliophysics means the physics surrounding sun, its activities, etc. So it will position India among a few nations with dedicated solar mission, which is NASA's Parker Solar Probe, your ESA's Solar Orbiter, etc. Then finally, in different kinds of research and development that we are doing for creating the payloads of your Aditya mission will be helped, because see, obviously you haven't gone till the moon, till the sun, but then you are at a distance where you are trying to photograph the sun and etc. So that means it requires much more precision, much more strength, much more safe instruments to actually do all of this. So that kind of research will help us even in future optics, detectors and space instrumentation. Okay, so this is the reason why we have now, we are involved in your Aditya L1 mission. If a question does come, that is exactly how it will be also. It will be like what Aditya L1 comparison with Parker Solar Probe, then coming on to what is the need for it, what are the payloads, etc. Okay. Now, the two topics that we have not included into this is your NAVIC and your Gaganyaan, primarily because so much of information you would have already processed when it comes to your prelims, and it doesn't require me to put it into a structure or anything. You would already be familiar with these things. Now, I hope all the topics that we've discussed today are clear to you. The idea of these questions or these areas, if you might, would be because I've analyzed almost the 6 months of current affairs. That's the reason why a lot of new stuff you would have, maybe something, even recent stuff is being included into this. So what happens is, when UPSC tries to frame mains questions also, if you observe the science and tech questions, none of it is like so specific about what is hyperspectral imaging, that crystallography. They don't ask such kind of questions. They ask a much more broader scaled questions, which are having so much of applications for India, Indian governance, etc. Got it. So that is the reason why with every topic we've discussed, I have put out the Indian initiatives, the different kinds of Indian schemes, etc. that are needed for it. So I hope this suffices for these areas. Tomorrow we meet again with the rest of the science and tech areas like your quantum computing, supercomputing, communication, whatever is from those areas. Okay. Until we meet again, take care and happy learning.